takes tremendous warrior courage to show your emotions, to cry when you're sad, to talk about what you're feeling and not worry that you're going to be judged or minimized because of it. So it's a huge learning process for everybody involved, and it takes tremendous courage.
Hi, I'm Ron Sprunberg, co-founder and CEO of Hi Mama. Welcome to our podcast about all things early childhood education. Teddy, welcome to the Preschool podcast.
Hi, Ron. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure to have you on the show, and I'm very excited to learn about this concept called empathy warriors, which is a key part of your work. Can you tell us a little bit about what empathy warriors means and your work around this subject?
I would be happy to. It's also the name of my book, which is an interactive workbook journal that is autobiographical in nature, and it's the name of my consulting training firm. So everything is about empathy. And my feeling is that we are empathic creatures, that we were created that way, that in fact our brains are designed to be empathetic. And so we're actually born with empathy, and the evidence that neuroscience always point to demonstrate that is in a ward where there's a bunch of newborn babies, and one baby starts crying, and then the whole room full of babies is crying. And so we're born with it. And yet, by the time we're in primary school, it's fading. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why are we born with it? And then as we get older, we lose it. And my feeling is that the caregivers, the adults in our lives, inadvertently teach us to not be empathic and to not use empathy. So my life's work has always been about recovering or relearning what we knew when we were born, and learning how to become empathetic again, learning it and teaching it and help others do the same thing, because everybody responds to it so well. Empathy is one of the most powerful tools that we can use when we interact with others.
So there's so many things that you could focus your life's work on. Why was empathy so important to you?
Okay, so then I'd have to get really personal to answer that, but I don't have a problem with that. I would say it's probably in my growing up years, I didn't get it. And my childhood was quite lonely and difficult. I was the fourth born child, 4 kids in 4 years, and I spent a lot of my childhood and teenage years feeling invisible and unimportant. And so I think I was around 12 or 13 years old when I heard on television a brilliant child psychologist by the name of Dr. Chaim Ginott. And when I heard him speak, it changed my life. And he talked about valuing children and listening to children and speaking to children in a way that honors them and values them and respects them. That was brand new for me. So that his work has had a huge impact on my life. And I would really say it's among the greatest stuff that I've ever understood about how to be in this world successfully. And what's really exciting now is that in the last 10, 15, 20 years, we now have the neuroscientific proof to back up his theories from the early 1960s, when there was no such thing as an MRI, and they didn't have the knowledge of the brain that we have now. So I don't know how he got it, how smart he was, or how ahead of his time he was, or how intuitive he was, but what he taught about empathy and how to communicate and how to speak and listen with empathy was correct, and we know that now from science.
Yeah, and even personally, I recently became a dad, and I get the feeling that things have changed from previous generations in terms of, the way you should respond to a young child, to be more empathetic and, as you say, never deny a child's feelings. I think, there used to be a mentality, maybe in my parents' generation where, okay, if the baby's crying, you can put them down and they can console themselves, sort of thing. But like, we're totally seem to be moving away from that, which does make a lot of sense. It's very, it's intuitive, but I guess, hindsight's 2020. But it does sound like you were inspired by somebody who really had the vision around that.
Oh, yeah. And, this whole thing that they call, quote unquote, self-soothing, it became very popular 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And God willing, it will phase out, because it really, to me, is the opposite of what babies need and what parents need to do for babies is, a baby needs to be held and touched. And we know from abundant research that babies in orphanages who don't get that touch and don't get responded to quickly are very severely damaged by it, So this whole notion of self-soothing, creating independence, I think is a false notion. And it's really hard work being a parent of young kids. It's really hard. I don't know if there's anything harder in the world, because you're sleep deprived and it's rough going. And but it's a sacrifice. If you're able to make it, you will see the benefits down the road. My children, my 2 children, one of them is 40, the other one just turned 39. And I can see in them that all the sacrifices I made when they were babies has helped to create the environment so that they are strong and, remarkable young people that I really admire and respect, and from whom I can now learn.
That's really cool.
So it really is. It really is.
Totally. Okay, so I think most of our listeners would know what empathy is, but I don't think they would necessarily know what an empathy warrior is. Can you tell us what that means?
I would love to. If you think of warriors, whether in cartoon animation or, real actors playing the roles, in movies, we see the warrior as fierce, strong, takes any risk, willing to risk their life, do anything. We always think of warriors as very powerful, right? Mm-hmm. And we expect warriors to be really powerful. And empathy has to do with really honoring and respecting all emotions and creating an environment where all emotions are honored and respected. So you put these two things together, and it sounds like an oxymoron, but it's really not, because anyone who, I say in my book, if you step your tippy toe onto the path and you enroll in the school of becoming an empathy warrior with me, you're taking your first step to empowering yourself and empowering others to be vulnerable. Because showing emotions is a vulnerable act, and everything in our society tells us to do the opposite. We get all these messages, especially career messages, to hide your emotions, like a woman shouldn't cry if she's in a high-powered position. It's all about, hiding emotions and becoming sort of like a robot to succeed or compete in the world. And so for me, it takes tremendous warrior courage to show your emotions, to cry when you're sad, to talk about what you're feeling and not worry that you're going to be judged or minimized because of it. So it's a huge learning process for everybody involved, and it takes tremendous courage.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think the tides might be changing a little bit in terms of the business world with that. I know at Hi Mama, at least, increasingly when we interview people, we're looking for people to show some vulnerability. We just think that's really important, to have that self-awareness and compassion and a genuine personality where you're willing to show that. So Hopefully, that's changing more broadly, but such an important thing to connect with anybody. And of course, when we're talking about empathy, it's all about connections.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what else can we learn about some of your work? What are some of the key parts of being an empathy warrior?
Okay, I can give you a little quick um, piece of information. Everyone that I have, not everyone, about 99% of the people who have read my book, and really enjoyed it and given me positive feedback. And I say to them, so, did you do the activities at the end of each chapter? Oh, no. I just kind of read it through from cover to cover. I couldn't put it down. It was great. Really like it. I'm like, wait, hold it. It's an interactive journal. Have you done the work? Oh, no, I'm going to do that. Well, I don't know anyone yet who has. And the point is that to do the whole self-reflection thing, to really go inside and see where the hurting is, it takes tremendous courage and willingness. And a lot of people are not there yet. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Teachers and caregivers many times will take courses, and they'll do coursework in social emotional programs that they can offer to their students or the children that they care for, right? And they do it all on what I call a left brain intellectual level, right? So they grasp the concepts and they teach it to the children or the students in front of them in the same way. And then you see these little preschoolers on the playground having a fight and repeating verbatim the words that the teachers taught them and the teachers had learned in the workshop, but there's no empathy going on. It's just words. And the impact doesn't do anything. It doesn't help because nobody's really developing those social and emotional skills if they're keeping it at, if you saw me right now, you'd see me tapping my forehead. If you're keeping it up there at the prefrontal cortex and you're not bringing it down here, now I'm tapping my heart space, if you're not operating from the heart, from your genuine core emotions, the empathy doesn't happen. So a lot of factors are in place, and it takes for the caregivers and the teachers this tremendous willingness to be brave and to work on themselves first and to look at the material and the information in any social emotional learning program and really take it deep inside of them and say, okay, I'm ready to make a change in me. Because if you as the adult are not willing to go to that uncomfortable place and get out of your comfort zone and stretch yourself a little bit to actually develop these empathic skills, then you won't be able to model them.
Yeah.
And then the change you desire doesn't come about.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important message for early childhood educators is the action piece, right? It's one thing to go to a conference or go to a workshop or read a book about something interesting and relevant to your work, but you have to be able to do something about it. And that's where the leadership and the bravery comes in to push your comfort zone and actually implement something in practice. Super duper important.
Yeah, we can't stress that enough. Like, so many times when I have been present in a school on the first day of school, and I've come in as a consultant or whatever, and has some kids on the first day, they haven't ever been separated from their parent before, and they're crying hysterically. So the caregiver, out of a place of love and caring, will maybe pick up the child or hug the child and say, oh, it's okay, don't cry. Worst thing you can possibly say to a child who's crying. Because you know what? That kid's in pain. If that kid wasn't in pain, he or she wouldn't be crying. So it's not okay. And what that message is to the child is, don't trust your gut. You're not feeling okay, but you're being told you're okay. Don't trust your gut. Don't trust your gut. Your feelings don't matter. Listen to me. I'm a grown-up. I know better. So the intention of the adult came from a place of love and caring and wanting the child to feel better, but the child feels worse. And parents and teachers do this all the time, because when we see somebody in pain, we don't want them to be in pain.
Mm-hmm.
We want them to feel better. So we say, don't cry. It's okay. It's not okay.
And it's something, yeah, and it's something we hear in the podcast a lot where, of course, these things always come from good intention, but
right.
it really, I think the message is that's not enough. Our intentions aren't enough. If we're an early childhood educator, we have to be educated on what we need to do and apply that. In that specific case, a really practical case, what would be the better way to approach that situation?
What I do and what I teach people to do in my training workshops is to try and tune in and see what the child is feeling. Generally, it's fear, and then give the child a name to the emotion they're feeling, and let them know it's totally okay for them to feel that. If I see the child's really afraid and really sad, I'll look on their face, I'll look into their eyes, and I'll say, you look really sad, you look really frightened, that doesn't feel good, I don't like when I feel that way, and just let them cry. And I even say to them, you need to cry right now, that's okay. Do you want me to hold you while I cry? You want me to hold your hand? You want me to hug you? I'll be with you while you cry. And just encourage crying. Crying is very healing. You can ask any neuroscientist. They'll tell you that what happens in the brain and the connection of the brain to the heart when we manufacture tears, it's very healing psychologically and physiologically. But, we live in a world where people are afraid of tears. And I think that the reason so many of us are afraid of tears is because it makes us feel too vulnerable. Because if we are empathic people and we see somebody else crying, we'll cry, which is great. That's great. That proves we're really empathic, creatures. But it's crying is scary for people, and so the gut first reaction to most people is don't cry, which is I say cry. That's great. Cry. I'll even say to some kids, like if they know me, I'll say, oh, I'm so proud of you that you have the courage to cry. I really know how you feel. If I was going through this, I would be crying too. And it takes their scary feelings down huge. Boom, 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 boom. You can just see it ratcheting down to the point of, the breathing slows down. When you give a child permission to feel their feelings, it helps them soothe and calm and breathe. Because, go ahead.
And I was going to say, I think any listener can think back to any number of experiences in their own life, both as a child and as an adult as well, when somebody who empathizes with you and says, like, it's okay to feel what you're feeling is a great feeling to you, right?
Yes, and it's what we need. And for teachers and daycare workers and parents, I cannot recommend enough that they listen to Dr. Brené Brown, because she's really the guru right now of empathy. She understands it in a way that few people on the planet do, and she teaches it in a way that really resonates. We can learn so much from her. She's fun to listen to, whether you listen to her ebooks or listen to her TED Talks or whatever, but she's really nailed how empathy works. And it's so useful to listen to her. We can all learn from her.
Awesome. And so today we've really just scratched the surface about empathy and empathy warriors. But if I'm listening to the podcast and I want to find out more about your work and your book, where would I go?
Amazon. You can either go to my website, which is empathywarriors.com, and then that'll link you over to Amazon, or you can go directly to Amazon and read a few pages of the book, on Amazon, and order it there. Also, you can connect with me at empathywarriors@gmail.com, because what I'm passionate about doing is helping teachers and daycare providers and parents start support groups, Empathy Warriors support groups. And I'm available to facilitate and help that happen online, through podcasts, whatever vehicle people want to use. Obviously, I can't be flying all over the country to help people get started because sometimes their support group might only have 2 people in it, but that's fine. It only takes 2 to get started, and I'm available to help, and I want to help because these are skills that everybody at any age is capable of learning.
Awesome. Teddy, it's been so great having you on the show. Empathy warriors, just the term itself to me really says be vulnerable and be brave in the same one term, and I love it. I like the work you're doing. Keep it up, and would love to have you back on the show anytime, but it's been great having you today.
Oh, Ron, thank you so much. It's been fun, and I would love to come back. Thanks a lot.
If you enjoyed our conversation, don't forget to subscribe for more episodes and leave a review. The Preschool Podcast is brought to you by Hi Mama. If you're anything like the thousands of teachers listening to the Preschool Podcast, you know how long it takes to fill out daily sheets, child portfolios, and lesson plans. And that's where Hi Mama saves the day. With an easy-to-use interface built by teachers for teachers, Hi Mama can cut the time you spend on documentation and parent engagement in half. Create and send beautiful daily sheets, photos, videos, and messages to parents in seconds, saving you time in your busy day. Podcast listeners can get a free tour with one of our community advisors. Go to himama.com and click the